All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are tackling one of the toughest, most complicated figures in the entire Bible, Jephthah. And his story, well, it's a real puzzle, a mix of incredible heroism and just absolute horror. And this is the question at the heart of it all. This is the mystery we're going to try and unpack today. How does a man responsible for that end up listed as a hero of faith? It's a question that forces us to grapple with some really difficult ideas about faith, human flaws, and what the word hero even means. So, to even begin to understand this, you first have to get your head around the central paradox of Jephthah's life, his official status versus his most famous and infamous action. Okay, get this. In the New Testament, there's this chapter that's basically the Hall of Faith, and Jephthah is in it, right there alongside absolute giants like Abraham and Moses. So he's not just some minor character, he is officially, undeniably designated a hero. And that title, well, it creates a massive problem when you look at the story he's actually known for. So now let's get into the case file itself. We need to lay out the actual events that cause all this controversy because the details here are everything. So the story comes from the Old Testament book of Judges, which, by the way, was just a period of total chaos and morally questionable leaders. And the story is tragically simple. Jephthah, he's this outcast who becomes a military commander, and he is desperate for a win. So he makes this incredibly rash vow to God. He promises that if he's victorious, he will sacrifice the very first thing that comes out of his house to greet him. Well, he wins the battle. And in just a devastating twist of fate, the first to greet him celebrating his victory is his daughter, his only child. And right here, this is where the puzzle gets so much deeper, because everything hinges on that one word, sacrifice. Did he really do the unthinkable? This single question has sparked centuries of debate. As you can imagine, scholars and theologians have wrestled with this, and they've basically landed in two main camps when it comes to explaining Jephthah's horrifying choice. And this lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the literal and frankly horrifying interpretation that Jephthah, in a shocking misreading of God's character, actually performed a human sacrifice. But then there's the other theory, consecration. This idea suggests he sacrificed her future by dedicating her to a life of service and perpetual virginity. Now, this was its own kind of death because it meant the end of his family line. Both outcomes are absolutely tragic, but they are worlds apart in what they mean. But here's the thing. It almost doesn't matter which interpretation you lean towards. The vow itself was reckless, and the outcome was just terrible. So, how do we solve that core theological problem? I mean, really, why is this guy in the Hall of Faith? If his most famous moment was born from pure ignorance and ended in tragedy, what quality did he possibly have that earned him a spot among the greats? Well, the source material gives us a really compelling answer. And it all comes down to this key concept: zeal without knowledge. Think about it. It's when someone is passionately 100% committed to something, but that passion isn't guided by a real understanding of what's right or wrong. They are all in, but they're headed down the wrong path. And that is Jephthah to a T. His vow was a catastrophe, a total disaster, born of ignorance. He clearly didn't understand the God he was trying to serve. But, and this is the crucial part, in his mind, he had made a promise, and he was going to see it through no matter how excruciating the personal cost. That brutal, misguided determination to keep his word pointed to an incredibly powerful, though tragically misdirected, faith. It was this terrifying expression of absolute, total commitment. So the whole thing boils down to this really profound and for a lot of us kind of counterintuitive idea. The source argues that Jephthah's story shows us that God saw past the deeply flawed action to the surrendered heart behind it. He honored the fact that Jephthah was willing to give up the single most precious thing in his world, even if the reason for doing it was terribly, terribly wrong. It's an unsettling thought, you know? It really challenges our need to get every single detail right. So let's bring it all home. What on earth are we supposed to do with this ancient, difficult story today? Let's break down the key takeaways from this whole theological puzzle. First, this story totally redefines heroism. It's not about being flawless. It's about the messy, sincere direction of the heart. It's also this stark, unforgettable reminder that God can and does work through profoundly imperfect people. Ultimately, Jephthah's story isn't a blueprint to follow, not at all. It's more of a commentary on how raw, powerful faith can exist right alongside profound human weakness. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. If the Bible itself presents heroes who aren't just a little imperfect, but are sometimes tragically and dangerously flawed, what does that teach us about how we view our heroes today? And maybe, what does it teach us about how we view ourselves?